Good afternoon, evening-ish here in Seattle. Everyone, my name is Ware Harmon. I'm the Executive Director of Town Hall, and on behalf of our staff and our friends at Third Place Books, it's a pleasure to welcome you to tonight's panel discussion with Patrick Sylvain, Jalene Tamerat, and Marie Lily Cerat, moderated by Danielle McKoy. As we get underway, I want to acknowledge that our institution stands on the unceded traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, and particularly the Duwamish. We thank them for our continuing use of the natural resources of their ancestral homeland. And we are very glad you're joining us today. The presentation will run around 60 minutes, including Q&A, and you can submit your questions by entering meet.ps/Sylvain. Full names of all the panelists would have been way too long, so settle for SYLVAIN, or you can scan the QR code right now on the screen with your smartphone. We'll drop that link in the chat as well, and you can submit your question at any time. In fact, the earlier the better. That way there'll be some queued up when it's time to switch to audience questions. We'll try to get to as many as possible. And as a reminder, if you want to view the program with closed captions, click the CC button in the bottom right corner of the video player. Town Hall adds new events and podcasts every day. Upcoming events include Howard Zare and Barb Toes sharing stories of prisoners with life sentences, and Monica Guzman and David Horsey discussing how we can be fearlessly curious in a time of seemingly unprecedented polarization. Visit our website to join our email list and get the latest updates as programs are added, as I say, throughout the season. Town Hall's work is made possible through your support and the support of our many sponsors. Our Civic series is supported by the Real Networks Foundation and the True Brown Foundation. But as many of you know, if you've been attending our events for a while, Town Hall is underneath it all a member-supported organization. I want to thank all of our members joining us tonight. If you share their commitment to a community that's strengthened through discussions of civics, science, and culture, we hope you'll consider supporting us by becoming a member yourself. One last point before you meet your panelists, you will absolutely want to go further into tonight's topic by purchasing your own copy of their book, Education Across Borders. And we ask you to use the link in the chat below to pick up your copy through our partners at Third Place Books. No better way to buy than at your beloved local independent bookseller. And with that, Patrick Sylvain is a Haitian American writer, essayist, translator, and poet, and an instructor of Haitian language and culture at Brown University's Center for Language Studies. Sylvain has been a lecturer at Harvard, RISD, Tufts, and the University of Massachusetts Boston's Center for Latin American and Caribbean Studies. He has been published in several anthologies, magazines, and reviews, including African American Review, Agni, American Poetry Review, Callaloo, Crab Orchard Review, Haitian Times, and Plowshares. Jalene Tamerat is a leader in K-12 education whose work focuses on the preparation of teachers in responding to the instructional and civic needs of diverse urban youth in a globally interconnected world. She began her career in education in 2003 as a classroom teacher in Boston Public Schools, and most recently served as dean of a Boston area residency and master's program for aspiring teachers. Marie Lily Cerat is Associate Director of the CUNY Haitian Studies Institute at Brooklyn College and teaches within the Africana Studies Department. Dr. Cerat is the co-founder of Haitian Women for Haitian Refugees, which provides ESL and adult literacy instruction to Haitian immigrants and refugees. A post-colonial scholar, Dr. Cerat's research examines the effects of the exclusion of Haitian language, culture, and history in the education of Haitian learners, and her research articles have appeared in Rethinking Schools, the Journal of Haitian Studies, and the International Journal of the Sociology of Language. Danielle McKoy is a lifelong educator as well as a passionate activist in the national prison reform and racial school integration movements. She's a co-founder of New York City's Alliance for School Integration and Desegregation. And from battling homelessness to excelling at Princeton, she leverages an extraordinary personal story and her expertise in advocacy, writing, and leadership development to lead equity movements on a local, national, and global scale. Their new book, Education Across Borders, Immigration, Race, and Identity in the Classroom, is the subject of tonight's discussion. Please join me in welcoming Patrick Sylvain, Jalene Tamerat, Marie Lily Cerat, and Danielle McKoy.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to state I will be moderating today's discussion with our three wonderful authors of this amazing book, Education Across Borders, Immigration, Race, and Identity in the Classroom. It is an honor to host any discussion with these three brilliant individuals. and I can't wait to get started. So the first thing I'll state is that my nickname is Quotes, because I best communicate my own thoughts and feelings by stealing the words of others. And I say that to explain why I will be modeling my moderation of this discussion around quotes. Quotes taken from this book specifically, and additional pertinent quotes about education and how it shapes the development of young people into adults. And in that vein, I will get us started by highlighting quotes from this book. I want to ask each author to pick an excerpt from the book that they most want to share with us all, and explain why that selected text is important to them and should be important to the readers of this book. And I will start with Marie.
Hey, good afternoon, good evening, all, and thank you, Danielle, for facilitating this conversation. I'm happy to be with you, Patrick, and Jalene again tonight. And I'll read the passage that I've selected and then offer a couple of lines to explain why, as you asked. The Haitian youngsters, let me start again. It's on page 58 if you want to follow along and you have the book. The Haitian youngsters' voices highlighted in this essay made comments that are consistent with the views of educational scholars like Delpit, Kingwright, and others about missed opportunities by schools to engage all children with a multicultural curriculum. The Haitian children thirst for curricula that offer and include perspectives and experiences beyond a Western Eurocentric epistemology. In excluding Haitian epistemology and Haitian language, culture, and history, schools fail to help these children build on their ways of knowing and experiences and develop pride in their Haitian identity or as descendants of Africans. In addition to learning about the emancipation of the American slaves in 1863 by President Abraham Lincoln, Black children should learn versions of history that illustrate the resistance of their African ancestors to the brutal and inhumane system of slavery, as many of the Haitian youth point out. For instance, American slaves like Denmark Vesey and Nat Turner, who resisted the system and sought opportunities to liberate their fellow slaves, ought to be featured as heroes in American history, not simply appear as footnotes in texts. The history of slavery and slave resistance in America must also be part of the larger American story, part of the American democratic project that involves all citizens. History lessons could cover the anti-slavery Haitian Revolution, followed by independence in 1804, when African slaves and their descendants on colonial French Saint-Domingue, present-day Haiti, overturned the system of slavery. This victory for human rights achieved by the slaves over their masters represents a significant milestone in the transatlantic history of slavery in the New World. It embodies humanistic ideals such as the equality of all and the, quote, unalienable rights to, quote, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness that are foundational to American democracy. The Haitian accomplishment inspired many oppressed communities throughout the Western Hemisphere to advocate for freedom, from the South American liberator Simon Bolivar to the Black American abolitionist Frederick Douglass. I picked this section to share in a couple of readings because I think it places Haiti in the center of what we call, the modern world call human rights, as the beacon, as the leader of what we know today as human rights. For the African slaves and their descendants on colonial settlement to have thought of freedom, to have spoken of freedom, and to have actually taken actions to liberate themselves is something that could inspire all across the globe, because human rights is universal.
Awesome. Jalene?
Okay, so in my chapter, I center my chapter on funds of knowledge as a pedagogical practice that requires that teachers identify the home-based, kind of homegrown skills that students learned how to do within their household settings. And then, they bring them to the classroom every day. And so as the teachers, this chapter is actually a calling for them to work with students and families to identify what those funds of knowledge or those skills are that they bring to the classroom, identify them, and leverage them to further instruction in the classroom. I'm going to read a little bit from the chapter that talks about third space. And third space as a classroom site where these funds of knowledge can be tapped into and used to inform the curriculum. And I'll go ahead and read it, and I'll talk a little bit more in a second. So Django Paris, in his theoretical framework for explaining culturally sustaining pedagogy, draws from Chris Gutierrez, Patricia Baquedano Lopez, and Carlos Tejeda and their development of third space theory. Within education, this is a theory that presents a conceptual space whereby home and school worlds are merged to create new educational understandings and realities. Elizabeth Moge and her co-authors conduct an exploration of this theory that explicitly positions funds of knowledge as a necessary contributor to third space. With the focus on literacy, they argue that, quote, active integration of multiple funds of knowledge and discourse is important to supporting youth and learning, end quote. Gutierrez presents the implications of third space pedagogy as particularly important for non-dominant groups because of the binary nature of home and school lives and the, quote, contradictions in and between texts, lived and studied, institutions, for example, classrooms or the academy, sociocultural practices, locally experienced and historically influenced, end quote. The literature depicts three theoretical perspectives on third space. The first locates third space as a geographical site, emphasizing the physical and social places where people come into contact. In an educational setting, the classroom can ostensibly serve as the geographical third space, where primary or home-based discourses, such as ways of knowing, writing, talking, and reading, merge with secondary discourses that do not have their basis in the home. Homi Bhabha, in another perspective, places third space in a post-colonial context, whereby symbols, through discursive processes, undergo transformation to take on new meanings and realities. The third, and perhaps most educationally relevant conceptualization of third space is the one developed by Gutierrez, Baquedano, Lopez, and Tejeda. Interestingly, in this portrayal, third space is seen less as a site for the development of new ideas and realities, but instead represents a locus for bridging home and school worlds to scaffold and facilitate the learning of academic content. Several studies devoted to the incorporation of third space in academic settings have reported gains in academic engagement and achievement. The preceding exploration of funds of knowledge adjacent pedagogical strategies, such as culturally responsive, culturally sustaining, and reality, and third space theory, motivates us to consider the advantages that accompany a leveraging of student assets in favor of more impactful classroom experiences. In a similar way to funds of knowledge pedagogy, students from non-dominant and marginalized communities stand to benefit most from these practices, as they do not often find themselves in spaces where their unique cultures and skills are upheld or affirmed. Within a classroom environment that serves as third space for reciprocal transformative learning, the act of bridging home and school worlds serves as a powerful tool for authentically connecting students with the curriculum. And I chose that passage because I think that we really underestimate the potential of the institution of schools. We underestimate the power that teachers have to really transform societies, and to do so while affirming the students that are in their classrooms every day. I think that a new envisioning of how schools operate needs to take into account students' assets, their funds of knowledge that they bring into the classroom, particularly when they come from these non-dominant backgrounds, like many Haitian American students, Dominican American students, students of color, who are, brought into classrooms or arrive at classrooms every day, and all of their assets are pretty much checked at the door. And I really just wanted to drive the message home that, like, we could do a lot more to both affirm the students in front of us and have them work with us as educators, co-collaborators, conspirators, to really transform the world and make things better. Patrick, I'll kick it off to you.
Yeah, I was about to say, Patrick, you're next.
Thank you. I'm reading from page, I guess, 30 and 31, 32. If a teacher is already curious, respectful, fair, knowledgeable, and passionate about the profession of teaching, then the mission to seriously educate students in communicating the required knowledge and skill sets is already grounded in a strong foundation. Now, the challenge in transferring a human connection through the classroom-related activities of knowledge making and problem solving, regardless of the constitution of the student body within a school or a classroom, as long as the gap of literacy or knowledge production is not major, an effective educator will expose his or her students to two fundamental aspects of teaching and learning, which are: one, being a broadcaster of knowledge, and two, being a facilitator of knowledge. As such, through his or her democratic, comprehensive, and infectious ways of teaching, the effective teacher becomes a catalyst in the lives of each pupil as they prepare for an array of social professional roles. I am reminded of Robert L. Fried, who in his book, The Passionate Teacher, writes, quote, "Passionate teachers have the capacity for spontaneity and humor and for great seriousness, often and at almost the same time. They join with kids in appreciating the abundant absurdity of human nature, but are also sensitive to issues that deserve to be taken seriously, particularly fairness and decency in how people treat one another. They try to build a culture of mutual respect amid societal pressures to stigmatize and condemn unpopular persons and ideas and to dismiss young people and their concerns," end quote. We have to constantly remind ourselves that young people are future adults and therefore might be our future bosses, colleagues, caretakers, representatives, law enforcers, and even criminals. A professional civil servant who embodies knowledge is inherently a skilled builder for the future generations. The moment you step into the classroom as a professional adult, your personal prejudices, dilemmas, and stripes must remain outside or sealed away that you will not pollute the learning environment. Additionally, an effective teacher must essentially be a reflective teacher. Your life's geography must be a constant road of how you interact with others, and negative or the booby trap roads must always be avoided as you are guiding your students toward their own futures. Hence, if you have encountered difficulties or challenges in your own life, instead of becoming bitter, vengeful, you must be constantly striving towards becoming a better person, a complete human being whose purpose is to showcase what's beautiful about humanity without being naive. Therefore, having that ability to emphasize, to empathize or sympathize, you intrinsically know that your students, diverse or not, are complex psychological beings who are embedded with their own histories. Ostensibly, an effective teacher knows that each child's personal geography has social, economic, political, historical, and psychological portals or checkpoints that must be taken into consideration when interacting with them. The classroom is not just a site that has chairs, books, blackboards, teachers, and students. A classroom is an integrated site of knowledge that has societal issues operating within it. Hence, most educators know, and all should, know that when an educator incorporates an appreciative and emphatic quality into their teaching style or teaching philosophy, this foundation of trust and nurturing of relationships create a solid platform for effective teaching and relating to students. So I chose this part. I think it's connected to both Lily Cerat and Jalene Tamerat's reading, in that a teacher, as I said, is a civil servant. In other words, you are there to really help construct society, right? The same ways that engineers and doctors are. And the classroom is the most important site, right? Because you are building future skill builders, right? Whole bodies, and not just bodies, being, who is going to replace our generation, the next generations, and so forth. And so thinking in terms of what's going on in the rest of the country, particularly in Florida and other places where the site of knowledge are being tempered with through politics and laws and so forth, when in reality, the classroom site, the site of learning, should be sacred. And it's for the civil servant, the teachers, that should really manage that particular site. And we could think of Haiti and Dominican Republic or other places where that site of knowledge is tempered with through authoritarian or undemocratic practices. And a good teacher, I hope, should be a democratic teacher, and an excellent classroom should be a democratic classroom.
Amazing. All wonderful excerpts from the book that really enable us to think about what education, the purpose of education in shaping the minds and development of young people, but also how education should shape the minds and development of those who are teaching young people, specifically young people from Haiti. With that, I want to highlight our first external education-based quote, and it's by John Maxwell. It states, "Children don't care how much you know until they know how much you care." Can you all tell me a little bit about how this quote resonates with you and your reflections in this book, specifically as it relates to what you believe is the ideal relationship between teachers and students? And I'll change it up now and start with Patrick.
Thank you. I mean, I think again, it's connected to what I just read in a sense, and Robert Freed's quote that you need to not only be sympathetic, emphatic, but students, they know when you are genuine, when you are authentic. students have that sense of reading people when you are fake, when you are mean, and when you are authentic and caring, they will latch onto you, right? Because not only they can see it, feel it, tap into it through your teaching, but your entire being. And so the classroom is not just a site of knowledge, but it's also a safe place as well, where students might be coming from places that are extremely difficult, right? And so that refuge is the place where you are helping them to heal. And sometimes you might not even know the kind of pain they're carrying, but that sliver, right, of care might take them to the day, through the month and the year, and perhaps the rest of their lives. And this is why a lot of famous people, actors and politicians, quite often they refer to a teacher, not really in high school. Quite often it is in middle school or grade school, right? Because it's foundational. And so if a teacher cannot care, is really mean, you have no business being in the classroom.
Awesome. Marie, do you want to expand on that?
I think Patrick have covered it well. I know it is a fact. I know we are teachers, and we've seen colleagues that forced us to wonder why why have they chosen this profession, because they like that humanistic bone, that caring, loving side of us that you need to be a teacher. I mean, I refuse to see students just as a number. I think we are people, and I think if we can connect in those humanistic ways, the transmission of knowledge is more effective, is more successful. We've seen it. You may have a semi-literate child from Haiti who come in. It depends on how you work with this child. You show appreciation for what they bring into school, like Jalene's chapter discusses the assets. Don't see them as deficient, because they bring knowledge of the world. You may encounter students from Haiti and other places who know well the sea because their families were fishermen, and they know the sea better than you would ever know it. So it's this notion of seeing the individual and seeing the assets, that the funds of knowledge, those great assets that those kids bring in, and constructing knowledge on it, rather than seeing them just as a number, or a poor child, or referring to them as these children, etc., etc. So I think Patrick covered it all, but really essentially, if you do not care, it's kind of hard to be in the profession. So I think for the most part, teachers are great nurturers for the most part, and those of us who manage to push our students in to success, or to success in life, and of course success is relative, is those of us who bring that caring to the practice.
And Jalene, I know your chapter of the book focuses on funds of knowledge and the assets of students, and so can definitely see how this quote relates to your specific focus on the assets of Haitian students, and the need for teachers to really come to their profession, or to understand their role as understanding, identifying, and highlighting the many assets that their students, specifically Haitian immigrant students, bring to the table, or bring to the classroom. Yeah.
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah, so I will say that that quote is really, as a former middle school teacher, especially, like I feel like that quote is extremely important, or underlines the concept that's extremely important, especially for students who are, maybe a little bit on the younger side, who can't really wrap their brains around like the purpose for like why they're asking you to do what why you're asking them to do what you're asking them to do, right? So like a 7th grader or a 5th grader might not be able to, understand, the importance of learning a particular concept or doing a particular task, because it means that it will give them the appropriate grounding so that they can, continue to kind of move through the grade levels and, attain whatever they want to become as adults. Like it's harder for them to kind of engage in that longer term strategic thinking, like their frontal lobes aren't fully developed at that age, right? But they will perform for a teacher who demonstrates and really embodies like genuine care. And what I would say, just to kind of like expand on that quote a little bit, is that I think that it, like my chapter talks about confianza, or like mutual trust, being an integral part of the funds of knowledge pedagogy. And it basically, like that term basically implies that like, as you are, inquiring about the funds of knowledge that your students have, like you're facilitating this through relationships. You're doing this in a way that like shows the students that not only are you interested in who they are and what their assets are, but you're also open to and willing to entrust about your like information about yourself in the process. You're building a trusting relationship that shows that you care about who they are and you want to uphold their assets, so that you can enrich their learning experience in the classroom. And confianza is a practice, it underlies a practice, but it also, I would say, is affirming for teachers as well. Like if you have a truly reciprocal relationship where, it's known and demonstrated that like you care about the other and they care about you, then like that can be fulfilling for the teacher. That can make the teacher want to be in the classroom, want to like do more with these students, and really serve them in ways that will make, that will help facilitate their growth and help them become, the most improved version of their selves that they can. And the same goes for teachers. They want to be better teachers in service to their students. So yeah, I think that quote definitely resonates for me.
Awesome. The second quote is by James Baldwin. It's one of my favorite quotes of all time. And it states, "The paradox of education is precisely this, that as one begins to become conscious, one begins to examine the society in which they are being educated." How does this quote describe, in your opinion, the ideal role of education in the development of young people, especially the development of Haitian students as they strive to understand both the society of the country they or their parents have emigrated from and the society of the country they are currently living in?
James Baldwin, King James, the real King James, I think. Again, it's about consciousness, right? Once you are aware of your environment, both positively and negatively, that is, to be able to understand that you are a product of your environment, but you are not the environment. In other words, if you come from a place where the environment is poor, that doesn't mean that you're poor. If you have come from a place where it is so-called the ghetto, that doesn't mean that you are ghetto, right? And that, in other words, you as the person, you're constantly evolving and growing. And so consciousness, it's about awareness of the outside world. It's about awareness of the self in relationship to the outside world. And so if you are not aware of your place within that particular environment, you might embody the kind of negative energy that the environment produces. And therefore, you don't really grow, right? And so you remain stagnated or fragmented. And I think, James Baldwin, it's always about growth. It's always about looking at issues of economic injustice, sexual injustice, political and economic injustices, right? And so once you are aware of what goes on into that environment, James Baldwin would want for you to change it, right? And if there are forces that cannot change it, that's why he writes the fire next time, right? Because then so much resistance to growth, and this is why in Haiti or in other places you constantly have political strife, right? Because people are saying, no, we want to change that environment. We want to access better education. We want better environment with better work, because there is consciousness, right? It's like, no, we want to change the environment from which we came from, because that environment is oppressive. And we're seeing it in Florida, in New York, in Texas, and other places.
Awesome. Marie or Jalene?
Yeah. As Patrick stated, as only King James can do. It's a cautionary, it's cautionary advice and tale as well, because I think Baldwin understood well the paradox of this society, the hypocrisy that's built within the society, the US society, where it's hard for us, Frederick Douglass said, I mean, how do you marry this fervent Protestantism, search for God with slavery? Those paradoxes, those contradictions are built in. How do we declare this country in 1776 that all men are created equal, and for 100 years kept Africans and their descendants enslaved? These contradictions, these paradoxes are still have woven and are still within the society that we live in today. And I think it's a way of telling us we need to be wide-eyed to understand that these things, these inequalities, these inequities, these deficiencies exist in our schools, in our society, in every aspect of it, and to work at dismantling it, dismantling those inequalities, dismantling those cancerous growth that's been festering for a long time. So I take it as a warning to be conscious, to be aware, to be open, to have our eyes open about the reality of the places we call home. We call home, work, live, and educate children in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say that just as the United States is paradoxical, so are so many countries, right? Including Haiti, including the Dominican Republic. And I think that, despite all of the kind of movements right now to try and, cover up the true histories that particularly portray, our country as it is or as it was realistically, and how we got to where we are right now. I think that it's really important for teachers to be able to give students, and particularly students hailing from Haiti and the Dominican Republic, opportunities to connect dots and draw parallels between the histories of both their home countries and the experience that the history and the experience that they're having here in the United States. Understand how our histories are entangled and connected. Understand how our current struggles are also connected in a lot of ways, and really engage students in those critical pedagogies that will allow them to like look at the facts, look at the data, look at the histories, and like Baldwin urges us to do, like get upset about them enough to do something, right? You can't be a teacher and like not share these these facts, share this history, and really be doing your job. So I think it's really important. And I think that, when it comes to Haitian and Dominican students in particular, and many Haitian students, especially given the revolutionary history of Haiti, like it's important for those parallels to be drawn and those histories to be laid bare so that students can really kind of, do the work of like asking the questions and digging in and, coming to their realizations and then becoming energized about it to do something to not only make their local environments, better here in the United States, but also, be able to leverage whatever kind of, power or influence that they'll have eventually to be able to make improvements politically, economically, what have you, socially in Haiti and Dominican Republic as well.
Awesome. And our last question or quote before we go to audience Q&A is grounded in an excerpt taken from the NAACP Legal Defense Fund's Critical Race Theory webpage. Woohoo, CRT. Can't have a discussion without that. It states really quickly that critical race theory should be embraced as a framework to develop laws and policies that can dismantle structural inequities and systemic racism. Building a more equitable future requires an examination of how the shameful history of slavery, caste, and systemic racism were foundational to laws and institutions that exist today. How does this call to examine the shameful history of slavery, caste, and racism help us better understand the oppression and potential liberation of Haitian Americans and Dominican and Haitian Americans as Black descendants of the only enslaved Africans who were able to successfully overthrow their colonial slaveholders. And we're gonna go to Q&A in about 5 minutes, so I'll ask maybe one of you to answer this question. You guys can duke it out amongst each other.
Patrick teaches critical race theory.
Oh wait, Patrick, you're on mute.
So the relationship between laws and slavery are intrinsically connected, and more laws were passed after the Haitian Revolution, so that throughout the South, slaves could not gather more than 3, right? And also they needed passes to leave plantation, because they were really afraid of what happened in Haiti would not occur here. So in a sense, when we see laws that were passed from after 1804, all the way to really the 1890s, actually all the way to today, I shouldn't even say 1890s, is to really bolster, in a sense, and anchor white supremacy into a legal framework. And the legal framework as a republic, this is a dictatorship of laws, and all republics are dictatorship of laws. But we're seeing it so that not only the past cannot be, the past has to be muffled, but at the same time, the way in which the minority of enslaved people, because Black still remains a minority in this country, would remain a minority, right? So you have laws that were passed to maintain the body as property, okay? And whiteness becomes property, and Black body became property. But also laws were passed so that Blacks could not be able to reproduce widely. And so therefore, the one-drop rules, for example, right? Even though you might have a person who looks white, but as long as you have one drop rule, you're Black. So you're still maintaining the body at a particular place. But and then again, you have immigration laws that were passed so that Blacks could not migrate in this country and whites could be migrated in order to maintain white at a higher level, right? And for Asian Americans as well, right? So laws are extremely fundamental in keeping Blacks in their places. And of course, we have issues of internal migration in the US. They could not move to other places. So therefore we had redlining as well. We have zoning. We have laws that were passed in terms of income distribution. Then of course, the last law, well, I shouldn't call it the last law, but the fundamental one that reintegrated education is the Brown v. Board of Education. And of course, in critical race theory, there is a theory that is called retrenchment. We saw that what happened whenever you have a kind of progress that occurred, conservatives will make sure that they pass laws to make sure that you regress, you go back. And we're seeing it in Texas, we're seeing it in Oklahoma, we're seeing it in Florida, where people do not want to teach about critical race theory and so forth and so on, although critical race theory has nothing to do with young kids, but it's a legal framework to understand laws and the way in which the laws are imposed and weaponized to make sure that certain group of people will remain in their particular station, right? And they will not be, the laws will not be used fairly to judge them or to distribute properly a punishment based on the crime, but not on the subject's color, not on the subject gender, and not on the subject's class. And thus, finally, we get the whole notions of intersectionality within critical race theory, where we're really asking, when you are looking at the individual, you have to look at the intersection of that individual, which could be race, class, gender, sexual orientations, and so forth and so on.
Awesome. So we're about 13 minutes till the end, and I have a great question from the audience. What is the biggest myth that teachers have been told to integrate in their classroom that doesn't actually benefit students, specifically Haitian students and students from the Dominican Republic?
Lily, you want to go, or Jalene?
The greatest myth is, I don't know, that it's not, that you only need to learn one language. You should not, you should definitely forget your native language and learn English, because that's all you will need. Whereas I often say the founders of this nation were all polyglots. They spoke Latin, Greek, French, German, English, so on and so forth. And the more languages you speak, the more access you have to a wider body of knowledge. If you speak Spanish, you read in Spanish. You speak Japanese, you read in Japanese, so on and so forth. So I think one of the myths is that you can forget your language resources, your whatever you bring with you, and then learn English, and your life will be better.
Yeah, that's an important myth.
Monolingual myth.
Yeah, and I'll just share, like, I don't know that this is like a myth that people consciously kind of like perpetuate, but I think that there is a persistent way that, like, we as educators or just as people tend to make generalizations about culture. So we'll say that, like, Haitian students like are this way, or Dominican students do this thing. And I actually feel that, yes, while there are some kind of like cultural practices that are shared amongst people who are coming from, a certain country or have a certain ethnicity. Culture is fluid. So, and especially, in this day and age when there's access to so much information online. I always think back to, the school where I spent the most time as a classroom teacher in Boston Public Schools. I taught in Chinatown, and how, the school population was predominantly Asian American, but a good 30 to 40% of the students were, Black, Latinx. And they, the Black and Latinx students were very well versed in K-pop. And they would go to the Chinese bakery around the corner and, eat bao for breakfast, and so they knew a lot about other cultures, and they had actually begun to incorporate some practices or some understandings of cultures that, weren't, categorically like Caribbean or, Black or, Hispanic. They were like elements of Asian culture. And, of course, living here in the United States, like they are very well versed in white culture too, like understanding it. At least you have to, as a person of color, most of the time. And so I think that, it is a strong misjudgment if teachers kind of approach a student or a group of students just knowing where they come from, or knowing their ethnicity, knowing their race, and assuming that their culture is this, and like this is what they know, and that's it. So
We can go
And
to the next
Patrick?
question. Well, we can go to the next question if there's
Oh,
another
yeah.
question.
This is a juicy one. Did the three of you find any challenges or have any disagreements in philosophy or personal teaching style when writing the book? And I guess how did the three of you come to co-author this book together? I know the answer to this, but it's a great question.
Actually, we have not had, I don't think so. I don't think we have had any kind of disagreement at all. Given that, I've invited Marie Lily Cerat, and invited, Jalene. And no, we have, it's still, even now, there's no disagreement. We pretty much, I would say, sync in terms of, not sinking, but sync in terms of the way in which we see the world and education. So no, and sort of so that's what I'll say, and then I'll, Jalene and Marie, you could jump in.
no, I think that, if I think that, like, for me, I stayed in my lane, right? So I do not have, I'm like Patrick and I, full disclosure, Patrick and I are partners, like we're husband and wife, right? And I'm not Haitian, like I don't have Haitian or Dominican kind of background, like heritage. I do know and understand, quite a bit about Haiti through my relationship with Patrick, and through, experiences, of course, with students that I've taught over the years, and growing up in the Mattapan section of Boston, which is predominantly Haitian. I was very intent on like focusing kind of my chapter on my experience as a teacher of Haitian and Dominican students. Whereas, both Patrick and Lily could speak to their experiences and their deep knowledge and understanding of Haiti and of Dominican Republic, but specifically Haiti because they are both from, Haiti originally. And I think that they're, even though, like, for all three of us, like, I think that we draw a lot from personal experience. There's a lot of kind of narrative, like reflective writing on our own experiences that, our individual experience is our individual experience. And so there's no really room for, debate or disagreements there. Lily, what do you think?
No. I think we've been in agreement. I think we are ideologically more or less in the same place. Although sometimes I tend to be a little bit more radical, I think, because I know I know the system needs to completely be reinvented. And so that's one of the arguments that I fiercely make, is that if we understand that school reproduces society, and we all know that, we can do away with the school as it is because of these structural inequities that undergird school, and reinvent, come up with a new school for a new society where there is true equality, etc., etc. I think that's the only, and I know maybe Patrick and I are much more.
I'm with you now. I'm
No.
with you.
Okay, we're like, okay, this is defective. And if it's defective, it will only reproduce things that are defective. So we need to re-envision, reimagine, reconstruct, reinvent the school so that we really have a school that produces citizens that value, respect one another, and can build a society that is free of all these handicaps or these elements that are following us.
Awesome. And the last question, which I think is amazing, just came in. What does your book include that you have yet to find anywhere else?
Well, I mean, I'll let each person talk in details, but part of the reason that I invited Jalene and Lily is because they were writing about something in which people were not writing about before, right? And so the three of us, our voices in terms of what we are writing about, and this is why Beacon Press is publishing it, yeah, because it's new, that there's a novelty there. There's no book out there that addresses, as far as education is concerned, Dominican and Haitian students. And Jalene can talk about, sort of how she is pushing the notions of the funds of knowledge, and assets the way that she's doing it, which is not out there. And Lily's work in terms of working with Haitian students in New York, and issues of language and so forth. And although there are people who've written about linguistic issues, but not within the context of the classroom and education, the way that Marie Lily Cerat has done it. So our voices combined allows this book to be extremely unique, and at the same time, the uniqueness it's not anchored as if it's only for people who can teach Haitian and Dominican students. It is also universal. What it is local, but is also universal as well. So I'll end there.
Yes, definitely echo all that Patrick just said. I think that, on one of the book talks that we've given recently, I mentioned that I felt like this, it's a very important book because it is it's a good starting point for teachers who work with not just Haitian and Dominican students, but all, immigrant origin students, but particularly for Haitian American and Dominican American students. It gives teachers some initial kind of understandings of what the surface level cultures may be, what some of the histories and experiences that students who are coming from those countries or have connections to Haiti and Dominican Republic may have and bring to the classroom every day. But it's by no means a manual. I think that it is an invocation for people to have that baseline understanding so that then they can foster the individual relationships that will really give them access to the deep, understandings of culture, the fluid, nature of culture that the students possess. What are the practices that they know how to do really well? What are the skills that they're bringing to the classroom? All of that has to come as, part of an inquiry process that's built on a foundation of trust and reciprocity. So it's an invitation. And I think it's the first book of its kind that really centers on this population of students, but, really invites teachers to get started on doing that, that important individual inquiry work.
My co-authors have said it all. I think it's probably one of its kind of I've not seen too much. And we've often said when you're looking for information or research material about Haitian students, Dominican students, Haitian Americans, there are a dearth of materials out there, very little bit. So this contributes to that body or that corpus of research on minority students, Black students, and it's an entry point. It's a doorway, as Jalene mentioned, to something that will be quite resourceful as a tool for teachers working with immigrant origin students. I think my co-authors have said it all. We think it's a great tool, not because it is from us, but we know it'll contribute to the conversations that need to be had about students, Haitian students and Dominican students.
And I think it's just a good book for even people who aren't in the classroom, who just want to understand Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and even just American education and how we, in a lot of ways, are failing students who emigrate or are part of, are not part of the dominant culture here.
Awesome. With that, we will wrap it up. I don't know if we have any closing words from Town Hall, but we do. No?
Yes, you do. I'm here.
Yes, okay.
Danielle, thank you so much for being here and leading this conversation with these absolute powerhouses. Patrick, Lily, Jalene, thank you so much for sharing your experiences and putting it into this wonderful and unique story that everyone needs to hear. So thank you. And to my audience at home, please remember to purchase a copy of the book through our link on the YouTube chat, and that will lead you to Third Place Books. So thank you, everyone. There it is. Have a great night. Thank you all.
Bye.